Hello and welcome.
You are here with me, Charlotte,
And me, Charlotte.
and we are the two Charlottes.
And today we are spilling the tea on,
Why, if we even have the audacity to create a goddamn podcast?
and I can definitely answer that question, Charlotte. So
Okay.
it all started for us in on Facebook, as where all great ideas start.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm sure you remember we was chatting and we've been friends on Facebook for a while now, haven't we?
Yeah, literally like
Like
years, I think.
years, yeah. And so we were chatting more and more, and we were voice noting each other. And the voice notes started off like, I think at the time I had like Messenger Lite, so I could only record a minute at a time.
I was the
And
same.
then I changed it to yeah, and then I changed it to like the full messenger, and the voice notes started getting longer and longer. And then I think it got to like 20-minute long voice notes, and we started having this little like running joke that it was like, oh, time for our daily podcast.
Yeah.
And, and then like we just have like really, really long messages to each other. And it just became such a thing, didn't it? It was like, "Oh, we really should do a podcast." And I think that we probably said that to each other for a good 6 months.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. I think it was easily a good like 6 months. And then I started to have those crazy dreams about us standing on stage talking about a book that we wrote about a podcast that we did. So we were
Yeah,
like,
I remember.
and now we're just here.
Yeah, it was a sign.
It was definitely a sign.
But there was also a little bit more to it than just that, wasn't it? Like the things that we spoke about in Messenger.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've been through in life and why this even came out in Messenger?
Yeah, so obviously like conversations we were having back and forth, we started to get more kind of like deeper into various topics, and we both love a good tangent, so we'd end up, oversharing massively because that's just how our brain works. Um, but to sum up, I lost my dad when I was really young. I was 13 when he passed away. So that's like started the kind of, I dealt with all the grief that then stemmed into my mental health condition. And that had all of its like ups and downs. I became a like at teenage age. I was blah, 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 blah. At teenage age. English isn't Englishing. Um, yeah, I got pregnant when I was 18, and all of, the stuff that comes with that. I suffered with drug addiction, and my mental health deteriorated, and it ended up I like lost custody of Grace at that point. And then I went on this like huge like healing journey. It took a long time to get there, but like I went down this like whole spiritual healing journey and doing all the little different
Yeah.
things to navigate through all of the stuff that I'd been through, and that led me to where I am now, which is clean, sober, and stable with two kids in like, full custody. Grace is home now, which is like crazy to think about. So I think all of those things, like that's just a tiny little snippet, but all of that kind of gives me a lot to be able to give insight onto, I think.
Yeah, it really does. And you've suffered a lot of loss at a young age in your life as well, from what you were saying there, which can have, really crazy effects on how you go navigate through your early 20s and things like that. So it's incredible that you are now living this life and that you have your two children with you and that you're happy, and content and safe when you went through so much adversity at the start.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what kind of gives me that little bit of knowledge to be able to be like, I kind of been there, done that, got the t-shirt. So let me give you the roadmap out the
Absolutely.
other side. And I'm sure you're very much the same. Like I know, you've had like big life experiences that you've been through. So, do you want to just do a little in the nutshell to kind of give us an
Yeah, sure. So, whew, like life was definitely not how I imagined it would be when I was a little girl. Like I used to have this crazy notion that by the time I was in my mid-20s, I'd be a homeowner, married with 2.4 children and living my happily ever after. And life just didn't go like that at all. I mean, I grew up with undiagnosed ADHD until I was older. So there is a lot of probably miscommunication and misunderstanding between me and my parents, especially when I hit like my teens. I ended up having to leave home, fell out with my family, fell out with my parents, and left home as a teenager, with no money, with no job. I was at school, so with nothing to my name apart from the bag I had on my back. And that's really where, everything started to tumble down around me. And I ended up in a very violent relationship. There was a lot of drugs and alcohol involved. It was a really hard time. As I said, I was pretty much homeless. I was living on caravans on the sides of the road with new age travelers. And I just have to say as well, like, I know that when I was younger anyway, I don't know if you have so many these days, but when I was younger, they had a really bad reputation. But some of the people that I met when I was living in a caravan really paved the way for me to help myself become a better person. I actually met my first spiritual person when I was living in a caravan, a Reiki master who kind of showed me there was a different way of life and a different way of healing and helping yourself. And that was probably a pivotal moment in my life, meeting her. But I am getting off track. So, as I
This is
like
exactly
to go
what we
off
were
on a
talking
tangent
about.
and bring myself back to the story. So, living in caravans and coaches and things on the side of the road, I became a mum. I was pregnant at 16, had my child when I was 17, and she was premature. She was actually 10 weeks premature, and that was crazy for me. I never thought I was going to be a mum. I'll be honest with you. I never wanted children when I was growing up. So finding out I was pregnant was a big shock to the system. And actually, that's what started me talking back to my family again. My mum wanted me to have an abortion. I definitely didn't want one. I felt like I was being given a gift from God to be able to help me change my life, because I never thought, honestly, I never thought I'd make it to my 20s when I was living in the caravans. I didn't think I was going to make it out alive. I mean, I know none of us make it out alive, but I really didn't think I was going to make it out alive. And I used to dream that I had this dream about being happily married and having a happy home and happy kids and being a great mom. And that all just seemed like a pipeline, just a total fantasy that would never happen. And it's just crazy to think that that's exactly the life that I'm living now. So I went from being a teenage mum living basically on the side of the road with nothing to now being happily married mother and stepmom, to have 4 children altogether, including my stepchildren and 2 cats. I have literally lived through everything. I've been a single mum on benefits. I've been a single mum in charge of a franchise of pizza stores and having 150 people working for me. I've battled with all sorts of mental health and addiction issues through my life, like growing up as a teenager in really adverse conditions. And I've really lived a colorful life, from, traveling all around in caravans and buses, going to Glastonbury Festival years and years ago when it was totally different to what it's like now, being a single mum, being a married mum, and everything in between. I just feel like I have lived such a colorful, vivid life that I can really speak with a lot of authority on a lot of topics that we want to cover, literally from, drug addiction to motherhood to premature babies to domestic violence and more in between. And I'm just really excited to get going on this podcast with you.
Yeah, no, and do you know what? I'm so excited, because the more and more I think about it, the more and more I'm like, yes, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional, I'm not a psychologist, but I've been to all the schools of life you can possibly have. And, I think that gives you a lot more insight into, things than, any kind of like books and stuff can do for you. And I hope that, even if one person listens to our podcast and sees that actually, there's light at the end of the tunnel, then as far as I'm concerned, my job is done. So,
Yeah, that's really good. And that's a really good thing to want to achieve with the podcast as well. It's like everything that we've lived through then has meaning and makes sense.
yeah, something positive has come out of all of, the absolute car crash that was some of these times in our life. Like, and that sounds really depressing. And don't get me wrong, like, we've both had really happy times and been through some really awesome things and like had really good lives. Like, my life hasn't been a complete car crash, but there's been enough of the bad stuff to give me the life experience to be able to talk about it. So, yeah.
Enough of the bad stuff to write a book.
Yeah, which, is definitely coming. And, then there'll be a movie.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I always say that I feel like my life in my maybe I'm the whirlwind, I'm not sure, but am I the whirlwind just crashing through like one thing to another? And it's like when people say, what's that saying when people are like, oh, why do you always pick the hard road? And you're like, wait, why do you think I see two roads?
Yeah,
Just,
there's two.
just
There's two options here. There's only
what?
one.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would love to achieve something like that with this podcast as well. Like we want to talk about, obviously, between the two of us, I mean, our life experiences between the two of us are really varied,
Yeah.
plentiful. Some of them are quite intense and quite deep. So I do think that we might be able to reach some people that, need a light to get them through the darkness that they're going through. And I'd really like to try and learn a little bit more as well. Maybe we can get guest speakers on in the future and share more experiences and get more education into why certain things happen or certain things, may, what's the word you use? Not trigger, but
Activate.
activate people,
Yeah.
and just ways that we can maybe help other people, then like tricks that we've learned to help ourselves through the dark times, and help us not be so activated. I mean, me and you can talk about some quite horrific situations with quite a lot of comedy. That's
Yeah, I
something I
know.
love
And I
about talking.
like I don't know if that's a coping mechanism. I'm gonna call it a healing tactic to be able to,
Yeah,
you know, talk about some really hard stuff, but with a comedy aspect. And I don't know if that's because I'm at the point in, like, especially with things like, when I talk about, my dad and all that kind of stuff, like I've got to the point where I've kind of healed that part of me so I can talk about it quite openly without getting upset. And, then I can, make jokes. And yeah, sometimes it does make people uncomfortable. Like, nobody, likes a dead parent joke, let's be honest.
yeah. And it's not like we're making light of something bad, because we've lived through those experiences. We know how horrific they can be, but it is, yeah, I think I would agree with you. I always feel that I can talk without any kind of attachment about a lot of the things that I've been through, and actually, make a joke of a lot of things that I've been through, because I've reached that point where I feel like I'm free from those shackles of the pain and the hurt that it's brought to it. So I feel like we've, kind of stepped through the tunnel and we're out the other side. So
Yeah, you've done the
yeah,
healing part of the pain, so now you can talk about it from a place of acceptance and a place
yeah,
of been there, done that, healed from it. So now, like, let's talk about it quite candidly so that, potentially somebody else can benefit something from it.
yeah, absolutely. And well, I suppose we've nothing left to say other than we would really love to hear back from people that are listening in, what maybe their life experience are and what their thoughts are on what we have to say.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to see what everyone's feedback is, whether they, they're like excited about it, like, or, if they're, because like we're obviously buzzing about it. I don't think I've like
Yeah,
slept properly all of this week, being like really excited about the prospect of doing the actual podcast and getting it out there. So I'd like to know, what everybody else is thinking now. Like, is this something that they're like, yeah, this is gonna be really good. I feel like I can relate to this kind of stuff. So any feedback, comments, questions, topics as well, like if there's
oh
anything that
yeah,
you think that, because a lot of the people that I'm hoping are going to listen are people that know us quite well. So if there's anything that you feel like you want us to talk about, then absolutely fire it this way. And if there's anyone that wants to come on and talk about stuff too, like fire yourself in our direction, if that's even the
Yeah,
right way to say
definitely.
it.
Let us know.
Yeah,
We're,
fire
like,
yourself in
having
our
a guest speaker
direction.
on would be brilliant.
Oh,
Just
amazing.
shoot away at us. Uh, but it's really good to finally get this going as well. It's really, really good to get this going, to actually record the first podcast that we've
I
ever
know.
done, and to see where this journey takes us. The
Yeah,
cringiness is over.
I know the cringe factor is still there a little bit, but it's done.
Yeah.
Done the first one. We've recorded the first one. This is it. And now, yeah, just I'm so excited to see what happens next.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for tuning in,
Thank you
and
so
we'll catch you
much.
next time.
See you soon.
Bye.